Melvi Broadcasting Network, a divine voice out of Africa. Remember to like, to subscribe, and to click the bell. Greetings, brothers and sisters. I hope I find you well. I just want to share some thoughts on a topic that I believe we need to look into. Because when we preach that we're living in the end of times, we need to know exactly what we are saying. And so here's a little bit of reflections that I've done based on the book of Revelation and Daniel and my studies of the spirit of prophecy. And I hope this will bless you and tinkle your mind on what needs to be done. So the 6,000-year Earth history and the coming Sabbath Millennium is a topic I just want to get into. And let's reflect together on this topic. And the question perhaps I want to ask you is, have you ever wondered how close we are to the end of time? Has that crossed your mind? The prophetic clocks have been ticking for centuries, millenniums, and the hour is at hand. And that hand is now almost at midnight. The 2,300-day prophecy of Daniel chapter 8 verse 14 pointed and reached 1844, which was a pivotal moment when Christ entered into the most holy to begin the final phase of his heavenly ministry. Since then, every moment has been borrowed time. That's what Revelation chapter 10 tells us. There's time no more. So the 1,260-year prophecy, which is also called the times and half a time, or 42 months, actually came to an end in 1798 with the fall of the papal supremacy. Many thought the end of all things then was happening. Yet God had a little bit more that he needed to reveal for the rest of this world. Now, here we are, standing almost 2,000 years after the death and the resurrection of Christ. A milestone that I believe in the reckoning of time, we are about to reach the 2,000th year around 2031. Could it be that we are nearing the very end of the 6,000 journey of sin and sorrow? Could Earth's history be following that divine pattern of creation week itself? These are questions I've been just wondering as I was looking at the unto 2,300-day prophecy. So let's explore this prophetic journey together and let's see if we could establish what the Spirit of God is trying to tell us. You would remember that there's a 7,000-year blueprint of Earth's timeline, because God's original week of creation had 7 days. And that week offers us a divine template for Earth's history. 6 days of labor that are followed by a 7th day of holy rest. And in the same way, could it be that the prophetic understanding that we have as Christians, particularly among Seventh-day Adventists, it suggests that 6,000 years of sin, which are then followed by 1,000 years of heavenly rest, which the Bible in Revelation chapter 20 calls the Millennium, 1,000 years. So the basic flow is that the creation week is a pattern of the global world. So 6 days of work, all right, which is 6,000 years of toil and sin. And then the 7th day is the day of rest, which is actually the 1,000 years of heavenly Sabbath rest. So if you look at the Earth's history in terms of the timeline, you will notice that so far we had, from creation to the time of Christ, it was 4,000 years. From BC up to the year 0. And then from the time of Christ, the AD period, we are now having the 2,000 years. And this timeline for me simply indicates that we are really living in the end of times. And I got this thought from examining unto 2,300 days, particularly when we looked at the end of the 490 years given to the Jews, or 469, and then there was a period of 7 years where the Messiah came. Until the time of the Messiah, AD 27, he starts his ministry. In the midst of the week, AD 31, he's cut off. And then there's another 3.5 years when the gospel then went to the Gentiles after the execution of Stephen. So AD 31 marks the confirmation of the covenant. All right? Give or take, that period indicates that we are almost at the end of time and Christ must be coming at any moment. So Revelation 20 then says, we are about to, when Christ comes, we enter into the millennium, or into the rest of God creating all things new, which is what we call is the new earth. So key events of the 6,000 years is that God has given that time for gospel work, for sin to be completed, and for sorrows to be completed. But the second coming of Jesus ends human probation and ushers us into the 1,000 years of peace, or millennium, where saints will be reigning with Christ and the earth is resting from sin. Right? There's nothing happening here. The final judgment is done and the new creation is ushered. So here's a simplified visual chart that I've done. So 6,000 years of human history under sin, right from creation, the fall, the Old Testament, the patriarchs and the kings and Israel, right up to the second coming of Jesus. That's the 6,000 years. But the 1,000 year is a millennium rest of reigning with Christ in heaven. That's what Revelation 20 says. Right? So there are biblical foundations to this matter, and I think I would like us to just perhaps pause for this moment and reflect on what the Bible actually says. If you read from Genesis chapter 2, verse 2 and 3, the Bible is very clear, because it says, when God was creating, he rested on the seventh day, and he was refreshed. And Adam also went into that rest with God. So God went into the rest with Adam. All right? 6 days of creation, and then the seventh, God rested. That's what Genesis 2 says. But again, if you look at 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8, it says, 1 day is with the Lord as 1,000 years. Again, that's a biblical principle. Okay? 1 day is like 1,000 years. So 1 day of creation, 1,000 years. Revelation chapter 20 actually reinforces that we will reign with Christ for 1,000 years. And Hebrews chapter 4, verse 1 to 11, if you read it, it is actually promising that there is still a rest for God's people. And so, for me, I believe this is a prophetic topic that must test some of the utterances that Ellen White, whom we consider as a prophet, Adventists actually consider her a prophet for our time. This prophecy is written in some of her writings. For example, in the book, The Great Controversy, one of the most distributed of her books, on page 656, she has this to say, and she literally mentions that for 6,000 years, Satan's work of rebellion has made the earth to tremble. He has made the world as a wilderness and destroyed the cities thereof. And he opened not the house of his prisoners. For 6,000 years, his prison house has received God's people, and he would have held them captive forever if he was to have his way. But Christ has broken his bonds and set the prisoners free. So here's the reference to those 6,000 years. And that's not the only quotation. There's also another quotation in the book Patriarchs and Prophets. If you look at page 342, She writes and says, for 6,000 years, there again is that reference to 6,000 years, faith has builded upon Christ. For 6,000 years, the floods and the tempest of satanic wrath have beaten upon the foundation of the creation of this world. And so, me as a student of Bible prophecy, very fascinated by these write-ups, I can tell you that the current contemporary signs I'm seeing, particularly in 2025, they are beginning to shape up this year to be a pivot year. It's an extraordinary prophetic year, because in this year, just as we get to the mid-year, we've experienced or witnessed an unprecedented global economic war. Massive disputes are going on tariffs or import and export or import duties. And these are shaking the world's merchants and shaking trade as we know it. We have also seen a significant political upheaval across continents and globally. The world is up in arms. We have seen this year the death of a major religious and political leader, a pope who just died. And we saw world leaders across the political divide converging in the Vatican, from Africa, from Asia, from America, everywhere, and Europe. So this death is significant in our understanding of the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation, particularly Revelation chapter 13. And we've also seen the escalation of disasters, devastating floods and fires and famines. Who can forget the California fires? And we have also seen a record number of earthquakes. I looked at the global statistical page and they said over 18,000 significant earthquakes have been recorded across the year, and this is only mid-year of 2025. Who can ignore the moral decay that's reaching historic lows, where immorality is celebrated and violence is normalized and righteousness is ridiculed and God is mocked? He's now being used as a curse word. All these, for me, they are fulfilling the words of Jesus, where he said, and there shall be famines, and there shall be pestilences, and there shall be earthquakes in different places. That's Matthew 24, verse 7. So the question I have for you and for me as I read this is, are we not seeing prophecy being fulfilled in our own eyes and time actually being wrapped up? As I conclude this short talk with you, here is what I would take home from my studying and what I want to leave with you at this moment. You see, I believe that just as God labored for 6 days and he rested on the seventh day, the earth also has almost reached 6,000 years, come 2031, okay, of the great controversy between God and evil. And I believe very soon Christ will return and the saints will be joined to reign with him for 1,000 years. And this is the Sabbath of the earth's history. That's my thinking. Those are my thoughts. Reason with me. Because I then believe that God will create all things new when eternity begins, and we will be free from sin, from sorrow, from death when Jesus comes and takes us home. And so I believe the clock of prophecy is about to strike the hour of 6,000 years of rebellion, of pain and death and destruction. We are reaching the 7th millennium, which is about to dawn on us. The question is, Melusi, are you ready for the ultimate Sabbath with Christ? Are you ready to enter into the millennium of rest? It could be 2031, it could be early, who knows? It could be a little bit more after those years, but one thing we cannot ignore is the fact that we are reaching in 2031 a clear timeline of 2,000 years since Christ started his ministry. or Christ was actually crucified on the cross. 20 AD 27, he began his ministry. So 2 years from now is the time when Christ would have begun his work to deliver us. He entered into the ministry, was baptized. So we are actually now, by 2031, saying we are reaching 2,000 years. Look into this, my friends. Consider the prophecies. Look at the timelines of this world and see if God is saying something to you today. So when we preach that we are reaching the end of or we are living in the end times, all prophecies pointed us to 1798. 46 years later, in 1844, there was that great disappointment where there was an expectation of his coming, which was the end of the 2,300 days. Then Revelation says, there is time no more. And so with this message, my brothers and my sisters, I want to invite you to check out more videos. We have a playlist on prophecy that we've created for you, and may God bless you. See you on the next one.